All right, so today we're going deep on EQ, emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
You've sent in a really interesting mix of stuff articles and even an audiobook transcript. So clearly this is something you're really wanting to understand, and not just about your own emotions, but also how it plays out in like the bigger picture,
Yeah.
with other people.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we hear so much about IQ, right? But all of these sources, they really make a strong argument that EQ is actually maybe even more important when it comes to navigating life and, just succeeding in different areas.
It really is like this secret weapon, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone's heard of IQ, but EQ not so much.
Yeah, totally. And MedPark Hospital actually has a really nice definition that we can start with. They describe EQ as the ability to perceive, control, and manage one's emotions effectively and appropriately in different situations.
So it's not just about knowing like, okay, this is what I'm feeling. It's like, what do I do with this feeling?
Yeah. Right, exactly. And it's not even just about yourself, like remember that scene in The Holiday where Kate Winslet's character, she has that realization that like she is the leading lady in her own life. And that actually ties in really well with something from What is Emotional Intelligence, EQ, where they talk about recognizing that everyone else is also the main character in their own story.
Oh, okay. So like EQ helps you sort of step outside of your own head and see things from other people's perspectives too.
Exactly. And that's so important for being able to connect with people, build relationships, and just navigate social situations in a way that makes sense.
So we've got understanding and managing our own emotions, and then also being able to kind of tune into what other people are feeling. Is this something you're born with, or can you actually like learn EQ?
Well, that's what's really cool about it. The audiobook we have really emphasizes that EQ is a skill. It's not some fixed trait that you're stuck with. It's more like learning to play an instrument or a language. You can develop it.
Okay, so even if you're not naturally like quote unquote emotionally intelligent, there's still hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to why EQ is so important. MedPark Hospital explains that EQ actually supports and promotes IQ. It helps you to actually utilize your intelligence more effectively and ultimately achieve more in life.
So it's not like an either or thing. It's really about harnessing the power of both.
Exactly. And I mean, let's be honest, life can be pretty stressful, right? And MedPark, they highlight how EQ gives you the ability to handle problems in a mindful way. So being aware of your own emotions and also those of the people around you helps you to manage those emotions and actually come up with good solutions.
Right. Instead of just reacting emotionally, you can take a step back, assess the situation, and then respond in a more thoughtful way.
Exactly. And the audiobook takes this even further. They suggest that people with high EQ can actually turn stressful situations into opportunities for growth. So they're not just surviving challenges, they're actually thriving in those situations.
It's like turning lemons into lemonade, right?
Exactly. And when you look at the big picture, the benefits of high EQ are pretty clear. Better relationships, improved job performance, greater happiness, all tied to this one skill set.
There's another source, Improving Emotional Intelligence, EQ, that really drives this point home. They actually state that people with high EQ are often even more successful than those with high IQ alone.
Isn't that interesting? They're better at handling stress, navigating relationships, even managing their physical health.
Wow. Okay, so we've established EQ is a pretty big deal, but what does it actually look like in practice? What are the components that make up emotional intelligence?
Well, MedPark Hospital breaks it down into 5 key components: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship management, and self-motivation.
Cool, let's unpack those a little bit. So self-awareness, I mean, that sounds pretty self-explanatory, being aware of yourself.
Yeah, it's about understanding your emotions, your strengths, your weaknesses, basically getting to know yourself on a deeper level.
So for example, if I know that I tend to get stressed out really easily, that would be part of my self-awareness.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those patterns in yourself, and then self-management builds on that. It's about being able to control and manage those emotions. So instead of them controlling you, you're in the driver's seat.
So like if I know I have a tendency to freak out when things get crazy, self-management is about having those tools to kind of, calm myself down.
Yeah, exactly. Like taking those deep breaths or going for a walk, whatever works for you. And then we move on to social awareness. And that's like flipping the script. It's about being tuned into other people's emotions, trying to understand what they might be going through.
So instead of jumping to conclusions like, oh, that person's just being rude, maybe there's something else going on.
Exactly. And then that leads us to relationship management, which is all about using that social awareness to build and maintain those strong connections, clear communication, resolving conflicts effectively, all of that.
It seems like all of these components are so interconnected, like you can't really have one without the other.
Right, they all work together. And then there's self-motivation, which is more internal, that drive to achieve your goals, to keep going, even when things get tough.
That fire in your belly.
Exactly. Now, another source. What is emotional intelligence? EQ. They present a slightly different framework from Daniel Goleman, who's kind of a big name in EQ. He identifies 5 components: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills.
Okay, so some overlap with the MindSpark model, but with a few different terms.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is how similar the core concepts are, like self-regulation, that's basically the same as self-management, and empathy. That's a huge part of social awareness.
Like they're all speaking the same language, just with different accents.
Exactly, and if we want to break it down even further, what is emotional intelligence, EQ? Boils it all down to 4 overarching categories: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management.
So no matter how you slice it, those 4 keep coming up.
Exactly. And there's this really interesting connection that Dr. Twerk, who's featured in What is Emotional Intelligence, EQ, she makes this point that those personal skills like self-awareness and self-management, they go hand in hand with the relational skills like empathy and social awareness. You can't really master one without the other.
So working on yourself and working on your relationships, it's all part of the same package.
Exactly. It's a holistic approach to EQ. And now I'm sure you're wondering, how do we actually develop these skills? How do we level up our EQ?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Is there some secret formula?
Well, MedPark Hospital, they give some really practical advice, they suggest, starting with self-awareness, things like mindfulness, meditation, journaling, anything that helps you create space to observe your emotions without judgment.
So instead of getting swept away by my emotions, I'm learning to just notice them.
Exactly. And once you're more aware of your own emotions, then you can start to really tune into other people's feelings. And MedPark suggests paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues.
So not just what people are saying, but also how they're saying it, their body language, all of that.
Exactly. And if you're not sure if you're reading the signals correctly, they recommend seeking feedback from people you trust. Sometimes an outside perspective can be really helpful.
It's like having a coach in the game of emotions. So what about those times when things get a little heated? How can EQ help in those situations?
Well, MedPark, they really emphasize the importance of active listening, really focusing on what the other person is saying, trying to understand their perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
Putting your own ego aside for a minute and really trying to see things from their side.
Exactly. And that goes hand in hand with clear and concise communication, being straightforward and respectful, making sure that everyone's on the same page.
No beating around the bush, just honest communication.
Exactly. And they also highlight the power of a positive mindset, even in challenging situations. Focusing on solutions instead of dwelling on problems can make a huge difference.
Choosing to see the glass half full, even when things are tough.
Uh-huh.
Does that tie in with self-management?
Absolutely. And MedPark also encourages us to practice empathy, to offer support and understanding when other people are struggling.
Instead of judging them for their struggles, meet them with compassion.
Exactly. And they emphasize the importance of open-mindedness, being willing to consider different viewpoints, and being open to new ideas.
Staying curious even when we encounter perspectives that are different from our own.
Exactly. And finally, they remind us to embrace feedback instead of getting defensive when someone offers a suggestion. See it as an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in our own egos and miss out on those valuable insights now. What is emotional intelligence, EQ? Also has some great tips. They recommend keeping a journal to kind of document your emotions and identify your triggers.
That's a great way to build self-awareness. And they also suggest engaging in mindful breathing techniques to regulate your emotions in the moment.
So if I feel myself getting overwhelmed, take a few deep breaths.
Exactly. It's simple, but it works. And they also recommend reflecting on your experiences, especially those times when you felt like you communicated really effectively.
So thinking back on those wins and trying to figure out what worked well.
Exactly. And they encourage us to actively seek feedback from others, which echoes what we heard from MedPark Hospital.
It's all about creating that feedback loop, constantly learning and growing.
Exactly. And finally, they remind us to be patient and persistent. Developing EQ is a journey. It's not a destination.
Embracing the process, knowing that there will be ups and downs along the way.
And that's what makes it so rewarding.
Wow. So we've really covered a lot of ground here, huh? Learning about what EQ is, why it matters, and even some tactical things we can do to improve it. I think one thing that's really clear from all these sources is that EQ isn't just some, fluffy concept. It's really a powerful tool for living a better life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's like, while IQ might get you in the door, It seems like EQ is really what helps you thrive in your career,
Yeah.
your relationships, even just your own personal well-being, you know?
It's like that secret sauce that can really make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. And the best part is it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. So every step you take towards greater emotional intelligence, even if it's a small step, it's a step in the right direction.
And I think that's a really empowering message for our listeners out there. You're not stuck with the EQ you have right now.
Mm-mm.
You can actually cultivate these skills and really become the best version of yourself.
Absolutely. And as you kind of embark on this journey of, developing your EQ, maybe think about the specific areas of your life where you want to see the biggest impact. Is it at work, like navigating those tricky office dynamics, or maybe it's in your personal relationships, fostering those deeper connections with the people that you care about.
It's like having this whole new lens to view the world through. Now that you understand EQ and its power, where are you going to focus your energy?
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to use these insights to create positive change in your life?
Yeah.
Something to think about as we wrap up our deep dive into the fascinating world of emotional intelligence.